But you could have said
Gotcha.
it. My name is Nate House. This is Craft House Media. I'm here with my friend Tamara. So, I understand that you are writing a book on happiness.
Let me tell you a little bit about what sparked it.
Okay.
And then that will, I think, help to fill in a little bit more about what it's about.
Okay.
Okay, so I was at one of Lisa's 515 salons, a nice dinner party. Lisa asked the group, she said, well, who here can say that they're really happy?
Okay.
I was the only one who raised her hand.
Wow. Okay.
And so everybody looked at me and they were asking me questions, like, how did you do it? And so we just started having a deeper discussion about it. Afterwards, I realized that a lot of the self-help books that are out there regarding happiness don't really speak to us because they and I know they didn't speak to me. It was interesting, but I always felt like they were speaking to other people who could just look inward and find the happiness. Just look inward and find it. Well, if you've come from an abusive or troubled past, there isn't necessarily that frame of reference. It's very difficult then to know what makes me happy. I've been doing a lot of things in my life to make other people happy. Am I happy doing those things? It 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 became then a challenge,
Yeah.
to know. So when I was first starting out, I actually thought that happiness, true happiness, was for other people. That because of the damage, I guess, that I had taken on, either by things being overtly said to me or what I inferred by how I was being treated, that I wasn't worthwhile. There were a lot of very negative messages. And so it was very difficult for me to wrap my head around the whole concept of really being happy.
Okay.
So what I did instead was I set out to heal.
Okay.
I realized that I was damaged. Because the more I started to look into the whole concept of happiness, and I started having a lot of these inner, yeah, but coming up, and when I paused enough to really examine some of those things, I realized that because of the inner messages that I had internalized, that there were many barriers for me to really believe that I could be happy, that I deserved it,
Yeah.
and that it would last. I had come to believe that I was cursed, I was a loser, that I had deserved all of this. I had come through two strong evangelical churches, and the message there was, if you're a sinner, God punishes you, and so therefore all of the trials and tribulations that a person experiences, that's God's punishment, that's God's dealing with you. So there were so many different facets of negative messages that had become so deep inside of my every level,
Right.
that searching for happiness and trying to find it um, inside of me, outside of me, it just didn't seem that it was realistic.
I see.
So, but as I was going through some of my research and discovering a lot of my inner barriers, and they kept coming up and coming up, and then I started asking myself, well, where is this coming from? That's when I realized I really have been a lot more damaged than I ever realized. So I thought, well, I'm just going to set out to heal. And so there were many different aspects to my healing that I went through. And then as I was going through my healing, and I went through affirmations, I went through teaching myself, not learning, but teaching myself to, first of all, be comfortable with the idea of liking myself. The concept of loving myself was still too far away.
Much.
It just was like, it kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. That's how negatively I felt. But all of those damaged areas were coming out in anxiety, worry, depression, and it was a lifelong struggle.
Yeah.
So when I decided that I really needed to heal, I started listening to a lot of those inner barriers that kept coming up and looking at it. Okay, what does that represent? What aspect of healing does that speak to? Finding ways. So I would be researching and finding ways, and not just reading, but I was doing the work, which is really, really important, to do the work. So when Lisa asked the question of the group and people were asking me questions, and I was just able to share so much, and it was like people's jaws were hitting the floor.
Sure.
And I realized this is not something that's written about. We're not finding this information readily available in a lot of the popular culture books that are available about happiness. This is not, it's not being spoken of. So I realized I probably need to write this, and I thought I should start by writing about my journey and my experiences. And so that's how I approached it.
What's so unique to me about what you're saying is that there are plenty of people that have been traumatized. There are plenty of people that have had difficulties. Not everyone goes through the work of healing.
Right.
Not everyone goes through the steps of finding what they need to make those efforts.
Right.
That's what's very unique to me, what you're telling me. Like, that's exciting.
It's hard work.
It
It's
is.
scary. And I had nobody, I had no teacher, I had no counselor, I had nobody to hold my hand through it. It was just all getting it through. And, when you start peeling off the Band-Aids, and when you start peeling off the layers, there's a lot of guck under there. And the only way to heal from it is to plunge into it, to really feel it, and then to be able to tell yourself, I'm safe. This is no longer happening. I am now safe. And then to be able to really work through all of the healing work. And it was hard. I plunged down at times into the depths because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no
Safety net, so to speak.
No, I wasn't working with anybody. I didn't have a book that was kind of mapping it out or anything for me, or anybody ahead of me who would be able to say, this is doable.
Keep going.
You can just keep going.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there's an end in sight, and you're doing this. So I just had to keep doing it. I used a combination of journaling and artwork, and creating art pieces that I wrote words on top of. So it was very much art therapy that I did for myself.
Right.
But in that process, I was teaching myself how to see myself more positively, how to feel more positive about myself, how to feel more positive about my life and about life in general. And in the process, I learned more about what the universe is, and God and the spirit world, and where I stood in that. And I became introduced to quantum physics, and the notion of our thoughts and emotions as being physical vibrations, and that quantum physics has proven this. And I looked at some YouTube videos from
Sure.
Amit Goswami.
Okay.
He is a quantum physicist who breaks it down in a wonderfully understandable way. But he teaches us about our thoughts and emotions and how it affects our environment. And he was saying how love is the universal vibration.
I see.
And so, if love is the universal vibration of the universe and of everything, then God is a loving God, not a controlling God, not a vengeful God,
Yeah.
but everything is done in love. And so that was deeply profound.
Yeah.
A few years ago, when I was writing my first book, How to Heal Your Life on a Deep Heart Level, I had been approached by 4 psychics
Okay.
over the span of 2 years. I hadn't sought them out. They had each approached me, and they said, I feel very strongly that I need to give you a message.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And
How
then
does
they
that
were,
happen?
yeah. Then they were asking me. They said, "Well, what do you want to know?" I'm like, "Well, what do you need to tell me?"
Yeah. You're the one saying you got a message. That's
I,
great.
I'm, haven't been to a psychic, so I'm like, I don't know how this works.
Sure.
Every single person gave me the identical message, almost verbatim, almost word for word,
Wow.
and none of them knew each other.
Okay. You didn't have a friend calling these people.
No, they were in different cities, in different locations,
Oh, wow.
at different times.
Okay.
Nobody knew each other, and yet they gave me the same, like almost, and their approach to me was always the same. How they came and approached me, their message was almost the same, and the message was, Tamara, you agreed to all of these troubles and trials before you came into this life.
Wow.
Now,
You agreed.
yes. So it was like the first time I heard it, I was freshly out of a church, and I was like, okay, thank you. That's really nice. And just kind of smile and nod, and that's nice. I have no idea what to make of it.
Yeah.
And then the second person approached me within I don't know, a couple months or something, and the same approach, the same words. And because it was still in this close enough time span, I said, I was just heard those same words not too long ago. What a coincidence.
Right.
Huh. Oh, that's an interesting coincidence. Don't think anything more of it, right?
Sure.
Because it's like, I don't know what to make of it. What do I do with this information? What am I supposed to do?
Okay.
Okay, so the third time, again, same approach. I feel I have a message. I feel very strongly I need to tell you this message. Is it? Well, the third time it was like, okay. Look at her. Where's the cameras? What's going on? And I'm wondering, like, really, what does this mean? The third time, if nobody's setting me up for it, this is a message coming from the universe wants me to know. God wants me to know. I need to start paying attention. And I told the person, I said, this is not a coincidence, is it? And the person said, no, you need to listen to this. And I said, but I don't know what to do with it. The fourth psychic was a lady that I worked with.
Okay.
By that point, it was over a 2-year span. She said, Tamara, we have been coming to you and we've been trying to give you this message. She says, right now, she says, you need to understand this is Spirit speaking through me. And I was like, okay. I thought it was a little off. And she told me a few things about myself that nobody would know. So just to confirm that it was Spirit
Sure.
coming and speaking through her. And so I said, I've been given this information, but I don't know what it means, and I don't know what to do with it. She says, well, you're not supposed to be blaming yourself and feeling badly, because I had been feeling so badly about myself, about all of these negative things, feeling that I deserved everything, that I had somehow called it upon myself, and the churches had told me that it was God punishing me. And so if I had agreed to all of these things before coming into this life, then it wasn't punishment.
No.
It wasn't meant as something negative.
Right.
It was something, there was a purpose for it. What was the purpose? So the purpose, if it wasn't negative, was supposed to be something positive. What was the positive purpose supposed to be?
Yeah.
What was I supposed to learn from it? And then, if the universe was working this hard to send me this information, was it only for me?
Right.
Or was I then supposed to help other people?
Sure.
So I'd had some of these conversations with my colleague.
Sure.
And she said, yes, she says, you're working on she says, you need to listen to your publisher. Now, at that point, I had an illustrated children's book
Okay.
that I had gotten published. And the publisher, thank you.
Yeah.
The publisher was in Finland.
Okay.
It's no longer in print right now. He ended up closing his company, and he didn't speak English and I didn't speak Finnish, so it was his son who was doing the translation.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was something I was saying or if it was the way his son was translating.
Uh-huh.
But my publisher said, Tamara, you need to start writing down some of your philosophical thoughts.
Interesting.
And you need to put them into a book.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. So I had come back from Finland. I was living in Tucson at the time, and so I was starting to write some of my thoughts in teeny, really small notebooks, teeny tiny little
Okay.
ones. Because at that point I was still feeling very small myself. And so I wasn't giving much credence. I mean,
Right.
to put it into a bigger notebook, that seemed to be a little bit too official,
Okay.
too obvious, too official,
Interesting.
too like, yes, I'm a writer. See my
Okay.
book. It's like, no, I'm just
Just making a note.
writing it out. Don't mind me. So it started that way, and then the fourth psychic, when we were having our discussion, she said, you're writing a book. She says, you need to write about what you have been learning from all of these, going through all of these trials and tribulations, and your healing. She says, you need to write about that. There's a lot of people who need to be helped. It was,
That's really exciting.
I didn't know what to make of it at the time. It wasn't exciting at the time. It was kind of weird. It took me a long time to process it. Partly because I didn't understand what it meant, and I needed to learn more and figure it out. But I also needed to slowly start working on myself, on feeling better about myself.
Yeah.
Learning to feel better about myself. That if I was supposed to be a writer where my words had some meaning and value and were supposed to help people, well, I needed to find my voice as a writer, and it could be this tiny, timid little voice. Every writer that I read spoke with authority, and I didn't feel that I was writing with authority or that I could speak with authority at that point. So it was a long process. And so I filled up quite a few of these little notebooks.
Okay.
And when I had starting to get a little pile of them,
Sure.
that's when I said, maybe I need to start typing some of this up in my laptop.
Sure.
And I didn't know where it was going to go. When you learn about writing a book. You learn that you need to have an outline, you need to create your chapters,
Sure.
you need to have a writing plan. I had none of that.
Okay.
Like, I didn't even know how to do it. I didn't know if I could do it.
Sure.
They always say the first book is the hardest book to write because
Okay.
you don't know if you can do it, you don't know that you can do it, and you don't know what the process is. You don't know what your own personal process is. After that, you're fine. But so I started typing things up, and then I'd see, oh, this sentence belongs with this one. And nice to be able to do copy paste,
Right.
and then
a little better than little notebooks, right?
yes, exactly.
Sure.
So, because I didn't know like where I was gonna go beyond those little notebooks. I came from being an artist and creating individual pieces of artwork, and not writing a book. I am currently doing some very large canvases of ocean waves, and after I glanced at my purse because in my phone I have some photos I can show you.
But we precariously balanced our tripod on top of your bag.
Yes,
So
I can't access it right now.
away.
I'll show you after.
Sure. We'll include those in the link.
You can Google me. I'm on Fine Art America.
Oh, wonderful.
And so I've got some of my paintings, my fine art paintings there, so people, you can see. And that's a lot of my older work.
Okay.
I've got some abstract pieces up there. This series that I'm working on right now is Ocean Waves, and I had been inspired by seeing a photo of a painting on the internet of an old master who did these translucent waves, and I'm like,
That's what,
I need to try this. So yeah, I've been doing a series now and
oh, that's exciting.
totally having fun with it because there's no wrong with it. Previously, I loved painting flowers because you couldn't mess it up.
Yeah.
There's no two alike. They're always going to be different, and at every stage of its life, it's going to be different. So the same thing with waves.
Yes.
Every time you look at photos of ocean waves, the atmosphere is different, the lighting is different, the weather is different. So it's like whatever you want to do.
That's right. Yeah.
It's there's no wrong with it. Doing a painting is one piece. It's an encapsulated piece. When
Yeah.
it's finished. Whereas writing a book is much more ongoing. It's a lot more involved, and the type of book that I write it requires me to go very deep.
Right, because you said it was about your journey,
Yes,
and so that can bring it all to the forefront. You have to wade through it again or think about it again.
exactly.
Wow.
The first draft of the book, after I had finished typing up my mini notebooks, I think I had 30 or 35 pages. And my sister-in-law read it, and she says, "This isn't quite what I was thinking." I'm like, "Well, what were you thinking?" She says, "I thought I would read more of you in it, about more of your journey, because I had just written down my philosophical thoughts."
Okay. So
Philosophical.
keeping it way up here.
Yes,
instead of
exactly.
allowing it to-
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. So I had been following what my publisher had told me
Sure.
to do. I wrote down my philosophical thoughts, which was really the end result, the lessons. But there wasn't anything to show the journey, the progression.
Like, how did you process to get there?
Yes.
Interesting.
So that was really much more challenging to write, and I think it took me about 2 years to do that first book. The way that I wrote, I was able to jump around.
Okay.
So if it became too difficult to be writing about,
One particular part of it.
yes, then I could just switch to something else
Okay.
that was easier. And not having a writing plan helped because it just kind of
It's up to you.
it evolved.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, here's a chapter, and I think this chapter belongs before this one. And so I was able to move things around, and I was able mentally to move around through it. I think it was easier to manage that way, but it did take quite a long time
Yeah.
to write. That first one was really difficult. The second one, that the book about developing happiness,
Yes.
that was a lot faster.
Okay.
Because I knew I could do it.
Yes.
I knew I could create not just a finished product, but I could create a good finished product, something that other people would want to read. So already, those were two huge mental barriers
Sure.
that had been removed.
Yeah.
And then all the questions that I had been asked at that dinner party, that really sparked a lot of
Where to go with it?
exactly.
How interesting.
So it was very organic. I think my whole journey, my whole writing journey has been very organic. I want to go through the manuscript one more time.
Sure.
I feel I've done the final polish on it, but I really want to go through with much more of an editorial eye. That's it. And I feel that there's a couple more books in the pipeline
Okay.
that have started to percolate just as a natural part of this interesting process. But I'm also working on my blog and trying to create one post a day,
Yes.
if not once a day, a few times a week, and putting out positive messages out there. And
So if someone wants to find your blog, where do they go?
type in tamarakulish.com.
All right.
TamaraKulish.com. My first books are on Amazon because I had been self-publishing.
Sure.
So, and having done graphic art in my past, I was able to format the books and
nice.
do all of that myself.
Yes.
So I didn't have to hire.
Hire out. It's exactly what you wanted.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I did all those, but
If I was going to summarize the message, it sounds like happiness comes from healing first, and then you can experience happiness. Is that kind of if you wanted to be happy, you have to do the work first.
yes,
Yeah.
that was very true for me.
Yeah.
And I think for people who come from, what I came from, if you've come from abuse or a critical past or a lot of trials and difficulties, that the inner messages that have been put in become blocks to be able to really feel happy.
Sure.
It may come in little spits and spurts. Oh, I'm happy, I'm joyful, but it can go away as soon as real life comes back. It's like, oh yeah, we're back to the same old, it's not for me. Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah, what I discovered was that there is a pathway to be able to develop it. And when life's problems come up, because they will, when life's problems come up, we already know what the pathway is. We can find our way back, and we can choose it, and we can keep going back to that. We're not going to be punished, and it's not going to be thrown away. It's not going to be taken away from us, because it's something that we ourselves have developed.
Right.
And if we've done the work and we've developed it, then that's ours. We know where to find it. We can hold on to it. So, yeah.
That is such great advice, and I'm sure that anyone who's interested in happiness will be looking forward to reading your blog and seeing this book. What a great service you've done.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking time to talk with us.
Thank you for interviewing me. I really appreciate the ask. Yeah. It's a pleasure. Maybe something will pop out.
Right. It usually does. In fact, I was at one time thinking, it's unethical, it's completely unethical, but I was like, I want to just pretend to turn it off, and then everyone calms down, and then they're like, oh, whew.
Phew.
Could have said it.
I'm just thrilled and honored to be able to do this, and I just think I've tried not to feel pressured over the past few years. It's like, oh my gosh, the universe has sent me these 4 psychics with these messages, and I'm supposed to do something with it. And if I'm not doing anything with it, I'm letting y'all down. I'm
We'll
sorry.
send a 5th one.
I'm sorry. So it's like, but yeah, I think I really needed to have that validation. Yeah, I think that's probably how low my spirit and my soul was at that point.
Right.
So I really needed to have somebody say,
Isn't that interesting?
yeah. And one thing that I wrote about I think I wrote about it in the second book. I know I wrote about it in the first book, was that all of our trials and tribulations are not there to grind us down
Yeah.
or to punish us, but rather it's more like going to the gym. It's supposed to make us stronger and to help us that no matter what happens in life, that there's always the flower. We're given a lot of manure sometimes. But what grows best in manure? Flowers.
I see.
So out of all that manure in our lives, there will be flowers. There will be growth. There will be positive lessons that come from it. And if it's not there to break us, and if it's not there to grind us down, then that means we're all worthwhile. We're all cared for. We're all loved. Because if the universe is arranging things so that we have the perfect circumstances to learn exactly the lessons we're supposed to learn, isn't that pretty incredible? How that gets arranged for each of us?
And I think that's the beauty of it too. It's not that the universe is just arranging it for a special person. It's not that the universe is arranging happiness for a special person. It's for all of us.
Yes. It's for each of
And I
us.
forget that too. Because I think that struggle for worthiness is something we all struggle with.
Yes.
We have to keep reminding ourselves that we're worthy, that these lessons are for my benefit and for me to be happy and for me to grow, and there's no exclusionary.
Sometimes I'll mix that with chili.
There's nothing that I could have done that is excluding me from allowing myself to be happy.
Right.
And I think that path forward of being happy, I was really contemplating this, especially in these difficult times, is there's a lot of reasons to not be happy. And when you already are in that place of like, oh, I don't know if I deserve to be happy because maybe I'm not worthy, but then also that the world is so chaotic right now or full of troubles or there's many people suffering that I almost add to that feeling of unworthiness or, and so I think it is so important to connect with your own sense of worthiness, but also to imagine yourself being in a place of service, because when you're helping others, I think there's all those confirmations that you attract.
Yes. Well, and then if we're all worthy and we all have the ability to have to develop happiness and to heal and all of those good things, well, what do we choose? in our lives? What do we choose to allow in our lives? Are we going to continue to click on those negative headlines on the internet and to read all of those negative things and give energy
Right, keep
to
feeding
that,
yeah.
and then feeling worse and worse about the world? Or, what are we going to allow in our lives?
Right,
So it
right.
it
That's so
really,
wise. That's so wise. Yeah.
but I think that it really opens up the whole bigger question then for each of us, that we each have this destiny. We each have this power. And so if we do, what are we going to do about it?
Right. Right.
Here, person here.
It's very exciting. It's amazing to imagine how
And like today's the
the
day.
people that you're gonna help, the people you help, like this ever advancing wave. I'm just imagining your art of keep
Whoa.
sending, this positive motion forward, and that we don't ever know.
No, that's true.
I gave a small talk after not a talk, a little recording of one of my friends that felt disheartened that she'd done some music and that it didn't do anything, she felt like. And then years later, someone that she knew said, "Oh yeah, I was listening to this song. It was playing on the radio when I heard about the hurricanes in Haiti. And it made me decide that I was going to be the one to step up and start fundraising and make an effort." And it led to several other efforts of emergency disaster relief, and it was just amazing how eventually that story came back to the author of that work, and it kind of validated her in that sense of like, okay, I get it. Like we just never know. Like you make an effort and you do something, and we never know where it goes.
It's true.
It's never lost.
Right.
And I think sometimes if we just measure what we can see in front of us, we might think that it's not worth it, or it wasn't enough, or it wasn't worth it. But we just can never know the effects of what we do. So I'm so excited for you. I think you're putting all this energy into the world in the right way, and it will have good effects.
Nice.
It's very exciting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.